Welcome to Season 2 of Pod Practice, where Mama Bird alumni Quinn Feiner, Mikey Lund, and myself, Alex Atkins, talk about Ultimate from the perspective of players and coaches. We want to engage with you, so please reach out, say hi, ask a question, give some feedback. We look forward to talking with you. To reach out, follow us on Instagram or YouTube at podpractice_pod. Listen on Spotify at Pod Practice, or email us at show@podpracticepod.com. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Today's guest is the founder of Advanced Ultimate Coaching. I know Connor best as London Clapham and Chicago Machine player, but has also played for the GB national team and Copenhagen Ragnarok, I think is correct.
That's true. Yeah. Good background checks.
Yeah. Thank you. We have a great producer. Connor, welcome to the show. I know it's late over there. How's it going tonight?
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, good. Back from practice, ready to chat Ultimate after 2 hours of playing Ultimate. Wouldn't rather be doing anything
it's
else.
All frisbee.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, do you want to give us a little brief background on your beginnings of Ultimate and how you got to the sport and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. Was always very, very sporty growing up as a kid. Actually, mostly did track and field for about 8-10 years, kind of growing up. When I was about 9 through till like 19, 20. Ended up pole vaulting for a short while within that as well. So yeah, that was kind of my main event towards the end of that. And then it's like a weird story actually. I went to a Roman Catholic school and they do like this religious retreat, which I didn't go on, but the guys who did all came back, and one of the counselors was an Ultimate player and taught everyone to play fair play, self-fishing, all that kind of stuff. So kind of everyone came back from that with
what age was that?
And loved it. That was like they were like 15, 16
years old.
But then yeah, and so that kind of came through after that. Yeah, and I didn't go, but they came back and everyone loved it, and I kind of picked up on it. So then when I went to college, when I went to uni, signed up to track and field, and Ultimate just happened to be right next door at the sports fair. So I remember stood there with my friends, kind of said, "Shall we sign up just for fun?" And then the guy who signed us up, I went to his wedding last year. So like full circle, about 10 years later now. Yeah. So I was playing up in the north of England for a number of years, and then kind of took the jump to move down south for work, but with a big focus on being able to play for Clapham within that as well. Yeah, that was nearly 8 years ago now. I've been playing with Clapham. Then GB for the first time in 2019, was meant to be my first Worlds in 2020 before COVID, and then yeah, this year first World Championships, which should be awesome. Looking forward to it.
Sweet, awesome. We know you started your your new coaching Instagram and company. Kind of curious what the background is on it, what the response has been like for it, and maybe some of the most common things you're getting asked about and teaching and training.
Well, the background came from because actually, it was an argument with my girlfriend that prompted it. So I've always been really pushing that we as a club and we as a community are pretty good with our development and trying to get people developing through into the elite teams and into the higher ranks and whatnot. And she was like, "Yeah, but what are you actually doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a fair point." So the goal has been to try and provide elite level insight and experience without necessarily having to make an elite level team. What tends to happen in the UK especially is that if you manage to break through into one of these top teams, you will receive top level coaching and top level insight. So what tends to happen in the UK is that if you manage to break through into into a top team, into an elite team, then you get top level insight, you get experienced coaches, you get top players being able to feed back and give you that level of insight that's required to get great. But if you don't manage to break through, then it's difficult to get that. You're unfortunately subject to the same level of experience that you might actually be playing in, because the players want to keep pushing themselves and going to higher levels, and so we don't have a lot of kind of coaches or really experienced players in those middle tiers. So I wanted to create something that would give my experience as an elite player and playing at a high level in a way that was easy to watch, kind of easily transferable. And then the ultimate goal is to have some sort of one-to-one program where people can sign up and do one-to-one experiences, whether that be working on something that they're looking to develop on specifically, or just looking for general insight on what it takes to get great, kind of tryout prep or tournament prep, things like that. At the moment, if you're lucky enough to have a friend or a teammate that has played at that level, then great. But if not, it's difficult to get that kind of thing. So yeah, trying to give as much exposure to that kind of stuff as possible. And the reception's been great so far. Yeah, working with a few different teams on like full weekend kind of guest coaching things. Just came back from Sheffield from the Great Britain Mixed Masters weekend ahead of their trip to LA. So I was doing some stuff with them, some university teams, a couple of one-to-one like remote bits. It's been great. And yeah, you kind of touched on earlier, it's given me a chance to flex my creative skills with some of the video editing and putting together some of the videos, which has been received far greater than I ever could have imagined, honestly. The reach and the comments and people's feedback has been really nice.
Yeah, that the one to like a guest coaching thing is really interesting. We've been talking about like maybe doing that, like us as a group or Mike, for a couple of weeks now, and people have been reaching out about that. So we might kind of get into that. So that's really interesting to hear that you're doing it. And the page is called AU Coaching Advanced Ultimate Frisbee Coaching, if anybody wants to follow. You're already crushing us in followers. I feel like you're already up to like 5,000 followers, which is fucking sick, dude.
Getting there.
Yeah. But yeah, what are the kind of the most common things, like maybe on those one-on-one sessions or even the guest coaching, that maybe you're, the most common things you're teaching, the most common things that people are asking about? Just kind of curious, like what that is.
So generally with the guest coaching stuff so far with teams, they've been wanting to focus on being able to maintain flow, tempo. That seems to be the meta in Ultimate at the moment. Is gone are the days of being able to stand looking at field for 6 seconds until something gets free. It's all about tempo and keeping the disc moving, and something that we have as Clapham and GB have been focusing on a lot, to kind of take away that one-on-one athlete style showdown, which giving you some insight here, Quinn, into the world's showdowns later on. But yeah, and most people in the UK especially get taught Ultimate at college, at university, and it's a very traditional vert stack. You cut to the open side, you cut deep, you cut to the break side, you cut deep, or if you're in horizontal, you're running these classic pepper mill style shapes. And it's still taught in a very traditional, you catch the disc, you look at field, you see what's on, you throw a dump, you probably lose yards. So kind of trying to break people away from that very traditional style of play and how you can create space without necessarily trying to get the disc has been a huge thing with that. On a more individual technical level, I think for me, the big one is trying to get people to be like cognitively aware as much as possible throughout their movement and throughout their cuts and throughout their throwing. I think it's so easy for people to kind of fall into automatic and their brains just go into their subconscious, and they cut when their body thinks the time is right, rather than when may actually be the right time to do so. Or they throw a fake because it's just their natural thing to do, and they're not actually thinking about why they're throwing a fake or when a throw becomes a fake, that kind of thing. So getting people to think on a deeper level about what they're doing and when has been a real focus as well.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, we talk about on this podcast quite a bit, like ungatekeeping the stuff that you're talking about, like the stuff beyond, just cutting the open side and then cutting deep, or cutting the break side and cutting deep. So it hits close to our hearts, I feel like. So it's really awesome to see.
Yeah, we have a lot of similar structures in the U.S. where people just don't have access to certain resources or are doing things a certain way just because that's how they've always done them. On your AU coaching page, you did mention the importance of decision making and how nobody really asks about it. Has that come up at all? Like, and what are your methods of teaching that and quantifying a good decision?
It's a good question. So something that I've been working towards with one of the teams I'm working with currently is on kind of success metrics, and how our goal for this team this year is to make nationals, and it'll be for the first time in a few years that they've done so. And they played a tournament this weekend, and they got a lot of stats from that with regards to generating turnovers, how many of those turnovers they managed to convert, how many clean holds the O-line got. And usually you kind of look at that and go, oh, well, what are we aiming for as a team? Like, what do we want? And trying to move more towards what is actually going to get us to nationals, what is actually going to get us to our goal. If these other teams are all converting their breaks at 75%, and we need to beat those teams in order to go to nationals, then we have to be completing at least 75%. And so trying to move that towards, like, we now know what is good enough and not good enough to get us to nationals. And if we're generating blocks 50% of our D points, that's amazing. But yeah, and so now we have a much more kind of set goal on what is actually going to get us there, rather than just kind of plucking a number and just hoping that it's going to be good enough.
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
That makes me think of like the idea of defining success is an interesting topic to me, or like sometimes it's overreaction to like what happens on the field. I think a lot of coaches or teams can overreact to a certain result, but maybe it's like a stall 9 bailout blade to a corner. I was actually just talking to Chance Cochran about this. Chance was over we did a watch party for a UFA game over the weekend, and he used to play for DC for Truckstop, who, common opponent of all of ours. Maybe we can touch on a little bit later. And he was talking about an instance, exactly what I just described. And I think Daryl was coaching at the time. And Daryl, who's an amazing coach at the time, I think is also an emotional coach. And in that moment was like, we have to change everything. We have to solve for this. But, and one thing that, I'll say like TK does really well for us is not overreacting to that, to like an instance of like failure of results, but where we are forcing, we're pressuring teams in the exact way that we want to. It is harder to quantify that with numbers. I feel like is a little bit more of a feeling or awareness, or like watching film retroactively.
Watching film is huge for me with it. We recently invested as a club in a VO camera, which is
those are sick.
They're insane. They're so good. You just put it up, you start recording, and then you get a full 2 hours of practice footage, and you can just watch it back, and it just tracks the disc automatically, and you don't. You would say
it's worth it?
Anything. 100%. We now get to watch back every single practice. It uploads automatically. We don't need to edit anything at all. It's so good. Would highly recommend. And it puts you in a position where you can add add notes or clips at certain points of the
Really?
session. So if you wanted to, as a coach, note down certain instances that happen in practice that were good examples, you can put that in there and tag the entire team to share with everyone, or you can tag certain people that you've added to the team roster for the account. It's 100% worth it. Would highly recommend.
That's awesome to hear. I've always wondered about that. It's good to get a little bit of an endorsement. I'm all about
Not sponsored. Yeah.
honestly, like I'm about spending more money on things that make you better. It's like a silly thing to say out loud, but it infuriates me maybe or frustrates me. Like I'm very glad that you have started Advanced Ultimate Coaching. We've talked a lot about doing similar things. In the States we have Rowan who has Excel Ultimate, and there are other programs. But it's crazy to me to think like how many Frisbee players I know where it is the number one most important thing in their life. They already spend two to maybe 10,000 US dollars a year, like it depending on what their travel is and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like what's another fucking $50, $100
Yeah.
spread across team dues
Yeah.
to give you like that kind of competitive advantage, or just to like learn more? Like, I don't understand why so many people. I'm a little fired up. I think Quinn knows. Like, for whatever reason, I'm just like in one of those moods today. But
it's so good, and it's so usefully specific to like field sport invasion games, because it was created for soccer or for football. With the tracking system and the ability to see the entire field or see certain sections in a way that it's like drone footage that you see at Worlds, or it's like the big high camera and you can actually see the patterns and you can see where people are moving, versus like a sideline camcorder, which you're getting certain things and you're seeing certain movements, but you're not quite seeing the sort of development of movement and structures that you want. It's been so useful, and I really like it for tracking my own stuff and seeing mistakes or things that I did well and being able to reflect back on it. And so many times you think that something has gone so well in a practice and you thought, oh, that was a great throw, or that I executed that really well, and then actually you look back and someone was a lot closer on a peel off bids than you thought they were. And you don't get to recognize that unless you're actually watching it back and seeing it. We got it in going into the 2023 season, and it certainly changed the way I reflect on my own performances at practice and in games, for sure.
And so you pay a subscription for it, is that right?
So you pay a one-off fee for the setup, and then you pay a subscription to the account itself to actually have the account be able to upload and whatnot. But like the setup initially, I think is like, what's it going to be in dollars? Geez, like $1,800. I think it'll probably be something like that. And then you pay a yearly subscription fee. But we host London Invite in the UK every year, which is a good source of income for us, and so we put a lot of that first year's kind of funds towards that. Yeah, 100% worth it.
That's really cool. I'm sold.
I'm sold
I don't
too.
know about you guys.
I'm sold.
I'm in.
I mean, literally, when I was at Mike's house this weekend, we were literally talking about like getting a drone and just like flying the drone over practice, like just so we had that. But like, this is obviously way better.
Yeah.
Right, because no one has to do it. Like, it kind of sucks to have.
And you don't have to listen to that the whole time. Like,
I don't mind the thing, but like, it's the fact that like you don't need anyone to actually run it,
Yeah,
which I think is huge. Because getting someone like no one really wants to do that. Like, man, the camera. Like, it's not a really fun job.
Would you or have you used it for actual matches, games?
Yeah, we take it to most, if not all, tournaments. So we will have it on our sideline for pretty much every game, unless we are being streamed already. So we can watch back every single game from nationals or from Euros. It's a bit extra for us to get it there, but it's so worth it.
Sorry, Kins, I know you're about to ask something. Did you get Machine onto it?
So Machine had footage,
Benson.
and we had drones, but which was pretty awesome. But yeah, it was like someone had to man it, someone had to do the stuff. And I couldn't give Machine every little insight into CU. We got to maybe have to beat them at Worlds in 26 or something. See how they do.
So you were kind of like a double agent.
Double agent, yeah.
You weren't fully.
All I'm saying,
Machine
if they turn up to Worlds in 2026, we're going to have some good insight. That's all.
Whoa, that's funny. Hadn't fully joined the Machine. That's funny. I'm curious. Like, you just got home from practice. Like, what a practice looks like for you guys. What you guys were focusing on.
We do a pretty good job, I think, of structuring our seasons, our practice based on where we are in the season. We'll tend to have a specific focus over a period of weeks rather than a focus for that specific session. So we're doing a lot of work on our handler defense at the moment. As I talked about earlier, with like that clearing space to create options elsewhere is kind of a core part of our offense right now. So we will tend to have 1 or 2 drills that we will do consistently over the space of 3 or 4 weeks repeatedly, so we can see some level of progress and see development there. And then as we get into the week kind of prior to a tournament like tonight, we'll do a little more game reps, end zone, making sure the people who are going to be out on the field are actually getting in their game reps ahead of the tournament. Yeah, handler defense is a big one at the moment, with that kind of mentioned about teams wanting to create flow and tempo and a much faster game. The traditional style of handler D doesn't really cut it anymore. So kind of trying to maybe innovate a little bit and see what we can do to make that more difficult to the likes of Kuzblafota and Truck and all these teams who like to play that really high tempo style of handler driven offense.
How long are Clapham seasons? Are you practicing year round?
We're actually fairly short compared to the rest of the UK. So a lot of teams in the UK will have tryouts in like January sort of time, which is pretty early compared to you guys as well. But it's because a lot of the tournaments start now in March, early April for a lot of the teams. We have European finals at the same sort of time as US nationals. So depending on the team and what their aspirations are, they may start later in the year with the goal of going to Euro finals, or if their aspirations are to make their nation's national finals, then that might finish in kind of August time, and then Euros might just be like an extra bonus for them. So for some teams it's kind of January to August. For us it's March sort of time through till October.
So you have GB nationals and then also Euros, is that right?
Yeah, so each nation in Europe will have their own national championships, which in the past have been some sort of qualification for Euros, and then Euros would be right at the end with all the top club teams from Europe. For us now, we have moved more to a US kind of series algorithm type thing, where attending tournaments throughout the year will generate you points and give you a certain ranking to take you into the European series. But we will still have UK nationals as a standalone separate thing as well.
So it's kind of like Champions League and in like I guess soccer
Premier
or
League.
football. It's kind of like that then a little bit.
Pretty much, yeah. So your Champions League qualifiers will come from tournaments ahead of the main kind of pool play, and then we will go to tournaments and we will play against teams at like these Euro qualifier events that won't necessarily then make it to Euro finals later in the year. So like your Pro Select, Pro Flight sort of events earlier in the year, towards one final one, which would be your US nationals or our Euro finals.
Should I call it GB or UK? What is proper?
So it's UK nationals because the UK includes
duh.
Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So if there was a team in Northern Ireland, they would technically be able to play in UK nationals. But Great Britain or Team GB is not including Northern Ireland. So if you watch the Olympic Games, it's usually GB and Northern Ireland is a team. So the UK includes Northern Ireland and GB doesn't. That being said, if someone from Northern Ireland wanted to play for GB, they would almost certainly have eligibility. I don't know how that works, but yeah, Team GB based in the UK.
Can anyone touch Clapham?
What about Ranelagh?
Well, are they part of the Northern Ireland?
Ranelagh are Dublin, so they are Ireland. They beat us in the Euro finals in 2022, and then last year we lost our 22-year nationals streak to Chevron Action Flash for the first time, which was pretty devastating. So that was it was a long time coming. Like, it was statistically it was going to happen at some point, but it was a shame that I was still playing when it happened. But to be honest, I think we wouldn't have succeeded as well in the Euro finals last year had we not lost that national final.
Interesting. Which you won.
We won the final 15-7, which is our biggest win for a long time. So yeah, that nationals loss gave us a real push to be better and to go and
what was
show
the streak?
That we need to be back at top. So Clapham was formed going into the 2021 season and had never lost a game at nationals.
Wait, say that one more. Into the which season?
2001.
2001 to 2023.
Wow. So we lost 2023. Yeah. So 2001 through 2022 unbeaten at nationals.
We
yeah.
The three of us are no strangers to breaking streaks in a negative way. We CU Colorado Mama Bird had a streak of 20 years of going to college nationals in the U.S. and in 2018, Kansas freshman year, we had a fucking stacked freshman class actually, and did not qualify for nationals. It was a brutal time in our. Fortunately, we've had, I guess, enough positive events since then to make up for it. But
yeah, it was weird having two national final losses in the same year, and them both being completely different ends of the spectrum on how I felt afterwards. I was pretty gutted to lose that final to Truck, but such a different mindset for me and kind of experience throughout the tournament. And like, obviously the semi against you guys was an all-timer. So like being involved in something like that is just
fuck you, Connor.
Hey, I threw my one turn. I tried my best to not let it go our way.
I don't remember the turn, but I remember that like sweet inside backhand huck you had off like the, I guess looking down the field would be the left sideline. You threw like this inside backhand to space. I can't remember who it was to, but it was.
We're up. What were we up like? We were up like 3 at that point, I think. It was first half when Machine brought the D line in, I think, for a no point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was a nice throw.
Anyway,
that was the most eventful thing to happen that game for sure.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you're thinking about post practice. Then talking about handler defense, like what's on your mind? What are you trying to work on, or what are you thinking about in terms of that?
So throwers are getting too good, and throwing pairs are getting too good to be able to play this kind of face marky, I'm just out athlete you and be faster than you kind of do these days. I think CU in 2022 at Worlds played a very kind of loose, flexible, sort of switchy D against Pony, against Ring, and we had a lot of success with it because I think, and this kind of kind of thought this before coming to the US, and that kind of solidified my opinion. But the level of just like one-on-one match defense pressure is just so different, and it's something that a lot of the time we can't compete with because we're not used to it enough. We don't get over there and play it enough to be able to kind of have that in our memory scrapbook. But we kind of tried to play a smart level of defense that combined that tight physicality, but also taking advantage of inactive players and being able to use our defenders to go and support where needed from that. So kind of similar thing with our handler D. There's probably someone on the field that isn't getting looked at very much when someone is running a reset. So what can they do to go and support? And how can we move away from our defenders having to just try and face mark and shut someone down in a lane when, like I say, nowadays throwers can just put out into space with enough touches they need to wherever they want, and a receiver's gonna go and get it. And I actually had a bit of a case study on Truck's ability to do so, because like they seemingly stand in awful reset positions, and then the next thing you know, they've got the disc 10 yards upfield in 2 passes from it. It's going to be interesting to see how it works kind of going into the season against other people other than just ourselves at practice.
That's always the tough question, and getting the buy-in can be difficult at times when you haven't proven a concept against other teams. Definitely something we are also familiar with.
I think part of it is that I think our culture as a club is unmatched in some regards, in that we all know that each of us are there to win a world title in however many years it is till Worlds. Like, that's always the goal. We are incredibly fortunate as a club to have been so successful in Europe over the years. And it's sort of now put us in a position where as much as maybe in the last 3-4 years we haven't been as dominant in Europe as we have been
in the past
previously, we're also still looking forward to that next World semi-final. Like, getting that taste of it in 2022, just for me especially, just increased that drive so much more. And like, being able to take on board feedback from the coaches and implement new strategies and new ideas, and knowing that the reason that we are doing this is because we want to win a world title. It's not because someone's just wants to have a bit of an experiment or wants to put themselves in more influential positions. It's for the benefit of the team and the benefit of each other. I think there's that buy-in across the board from all the players, which is awesome.
So you were touching on, Worlds and Team GB and, the tournament coming up here. I know you made the team in 2020. That didn't happen because of COVID. This is going to kind of be a long question, but I'm kind of curious what the tryout process is like, first and foremost, and then just kind of your expectations, your thoughts, how you're feeling going into the the Worlds tournament coming up here, and just anything you want to talk about there. I think is super interesting, and we'd all love to hear about.
Yeah. So generally, the tryout process will depend on the management and how they want to do it. From what I can tell, we have less influence from our national governing body when it comes to GB team tryouts than USAU do. For us this year, we did a pre-trial before the new year, which was fairly open application. There was some paper cuts, but there was going to be a lot of guys there ahead of time. And that was actually going into last season, into the European Championship season. So those teams are built of big applications, lots of people attending the pre-trial, and then they will cut that down into a main trial in the new year, where we have the management in place. They have an idea of who's going to be at their tryouts and maybe what they can form team-wise from there. From the European Championship season into the World season, tryouts will tend to be a lot smaller because the squads won't change massively from one to the next. and it's something that I know a lot of other nations don't have as much. It tends to be that the squad is made the year prior to the tournament, and you are then preparing for that. Whereas we're fortunate to have kind of a European season, playing other European national teams ahead of the World Championships to be able to try things out and make personnel changes. I myself played mixed in 2023 for GB, but playing open into 2024. So there was just a single trial weekend for GB Open this year, with a much smaller trial pool than the year previous.
Yeah, we had Matty Singh on a few weeks ago, and he expressed a lot of interest in trying to do something a little bit more similar in the U.S., at least for the World Games team.
Yeah,
there are some complications with geography and everything in the U.S., us being so spread out.
Yeah, we're really fortunate in that we can have a European season where the mixed team had like 10 practices before Europeans, then the tournament and another tournament, and then they have another 10 practices and another tournament before Worlds. It's like by the time they actually end up going to Worlds, they've had 20 practices, played 3 or 4 tournaments, and then the World Championships, which is completely different end of the scale to how the US teams have to function, right?
Touching on the differences and similarities between the United States and Europe and specifically UK, GB. Well, I honestly have a shit ton of questions about it, but having just played in the national finals of the US Club Series, and also playing against Mooncatchers in the Euro finals, what are some of the biggest differences? Actually, maybe the first question I'll ask is the U.S. actually ahead in anything other than talent and depth?
Both the two main ones. So I think that the top players in Europe are there, and they're certainly able to keep up. I think myself, Ben, Levka, and Lena all being in those finals last year is a great example of that. Especially from a female matching side, like there are some world class female matching players playing in Europe at the moment.
Here in Colorado too, we had the Cardenas sisters, who are not U.S. players.
Yeah, exactly. I think the depth is the main thing. For me, the main difference was coming back and recognizing, or being out there initially and then coming back and recognizing how much playing with the same guys that I've played with for a number of years made such a massive difference. I think it brings out the best in me and my talents as a player, because I have those connections and my teammates know what I'm capable of. And as much as I had that couple months with Machine to develop that, it's not quite the same. The style of D tended to be, I think, so much more that you just back yourself in any aspects. If someone is charging under to try and get an under pass, you go balls to the wall. I'm going to go get a block there. And if they jab step and go deep, then I'm going to go recover and I'm going to go get a deep block. The majority of the time in Europe, it's slightly more defensive of the deep. I think people give a little more buffer. I think they give a little more respect to that deep cut, to not allow an easy goal. And whether that's because at a certain level in the UK, there aren't many teams who at the lowest levels can complete pass after pass after pass to get that. Yeah, and you're just going, if we make this team have to throw 20 passes to score a goal, fine. Because of that difference in depth, I don't know. But yeah, I certainly felt the pressure from a match D standpoint a lot more in that regard.
So you felt like you had to cover more. Is that what you mean? Or you felt like it was less sophisticated?
If we got the turn and I was playing offense, I felt as though I couldn't just use my speed to just go get an under. I had to set up a cut in a way to actually make my defender have to commit to something first and then try and probably lose them after that. And there are a number of defenders in Europe who are able to do so. A number of players on Cosplafota who are very good at playing that. But
Can you
generally,
help
I think,
me pronounce that? What are you even saying?
sorry. So they are now BFD.
Cosplafata.
Yeah, so they're the top team in Italy, and
Okay.
they made the top 5 of Worlds in 2022 as well. So they are from an
Mhm.
area in Italy called Bologna, and they used to be part of the university there. Just going into a bit of their history now, which was CUSB, but they've recently parted ways. So then they are now just BFD, Bologna Flying Disc, La Fota. La Fota is the men's team of BFD, the club. But they are the child of Davide Mori, who I'm sure listeners will know, but he is big on high intensity, high commitment physical defense. So they bring a different level of D to most teams in Europe.
Gotcha. And sorry to break up your train of thought. And it
All
looks
good,
like
all good.
Quinn, were you about to say something?
I was just gonna say you should play in the ADL against some of the physical teams. It's insanity, dude.
A friend of mine who went over a number of years ago to play for the Cascades was basically cleaned out from the side on an up line cut, and he uploaded a clip. It was like one of his first games since heading over there, and the guy who did it stood up and was like, "I got the disc, man. Like, what are you talking about?"
Yep.
And all of us at home are just going, "What have you got yourself into? What are you going to come back
Please
in
come
one
back
piece?"
alive. Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying I saw that was it Toby? I forget what's his last name. The Belgian, right?
De Krijne?
Yeah.
De Krijne, I
He-
believe. Yeah, De
Yeah.
Krijne.
Yeah.
But yeah, Toby's over
He was-
playing with Montreal at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was balling. They had like a couple of closer defeats than I think they would usually have against a couple of pretty
Quality
good, shaping
teams,
up to
yeah.
be pretty good teams. I didn't realize how good of a thrower he was. I thought maybe like more of his forte was like being an athlete and that kind of stuff. But was he the one that had the crazy greatest in the U24? Who was that?
I think that was him attempting it. Yeah, I can't.
And
He was in that game.
Just
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I think that was him.
Because he's 33, I think. He had like 1,200 total yards against Boston and New York on the weekend. So like that's a lot of and it's his first
two
like
games.
to do that when you're the first 2 games and stuff, like that's big time. So
man,
the talent.
That space and that format just suits him so much. Like he's such a good athlete, and he's so confident in his own abilities. He'll go and get the disc. He like if you're not careful, he will rinse you deep, and if you step off him too much deep, he will just give go the ball until you'd have to tighten up. Like he's really, really good young talent, and kind of scary to play against I imagine in a kind of UFA style format where I expect to kind of share and help D is so much harder in that kind of space, whereas in your regular kind of WFDF setup, we're able to maybe slow him down and kind of give a bit more buffer to reduce that down. But still, like, yeah, one to watch for the future. He's insane.
He's like
that was pretty cool.
21 or 22 or something, right? Young.
I think he and Dan Demare, the 2 young Belgians, were. I don't know if this was their last year of U23s, but they're like,
okay, cool.
Yeah, in that kind of ballpark. Toby played in the Euro finals semis in 2021. We played against him, and that was like his big breakout year as a youngster. Yeah,
it's cool. It's cool to see.
Very cool.
A lot of the guys coming over. I got to watch Elliot play for DC against Salt Lake as well. And I'd say he had a tougher go at it. Not the same throw. I was really impressed by Toby's throws that I saw in some of the highlights. Elliot was able to stretch deep for them a couple times earlier, which they didn't have. But then also wasn't able to come down with a couple that I thought he was going to get.
I can't imagine coming from like the style of Ultimate that like WIFDIF is, and playing against Salt Lake in your first game. Like,
Dude,
one of the most physical teams like I've ever played against, and your first games against them, you just get every time you catch a disc, you get bumped on the mark. It's like
don't even get me
2005
started,
Ring
bro.
of Fire. Like,
It's such an interesting idea. I think with what people choose to go for in that sense. Like, I would have, had I been in the US earlier, I definitely would have given it a go, but it certainly wasn't my priority scheduling wise. Like, I was a bit restricted with work and with Euros and whatnot, but like my priority was go play the US Club Series 100%. And I don't know if it's like a different generational thing or what, but yeah, the UFA getting a few of the big European names now is pretty exciting.
yeah, it definitely feels like a generational thing. I think it kind of missed Kins and I a little bit. We're like 25, 26, but I think the generation younger than us might be leaning more UFA, but I think for us, we're still more into club and stuff like that. But I think like talking to like young kids, like some of them don't even know what Bravo is. Like, they're just like, oh, it's Summit, and they don't even know what Bravo is a little bit. And it's like, whoa, okay, all right,
Interesting. Yeah, really
Yeah.
It's way
interesting.
more accessible for the younger kids, the
Mhm.
UFA and all that kind of stuff. It's just easier to follow, kind of cooler to follow too, like
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And yeah.
Why did you choose Machine, or what was the connection?
Joe and Tim were playing for Is No Good in 2022. They spent a summer in Paris ahead of the World Championships. And we played them for the first time at Tom's Tourney, and lost in semis, and then played against them again twice at Windmill, which is the big European tournament in the Netherlands, kind of in the middle of the season. And we had some drinks and spoke about the US. And after work, I did a bit of frisbee networking and like spoke to some people and said that I was keen to try and head over. Sent out a bunch of emails in kind of November of that year of 2022, of which Joe got back to me in like 45 minutes. And they've done traveling players before, with Walt Janssen from the Netherlands had been out the year prior, and they'd hosted him in a similar kind of way, so they had an experience there. And scheduling wise, they had a pretty ideal setup from an offer standpoint to what I could make work. I'd spoken to a couple of other teams, and it was maybe going to be a little earlier that I needed to be out in the US and for a longer time. So kind of stars aligned, I guess. And obviously talking with Tim and Joe that year prior and playing against them and being able to kind of stick in their memory from that season, I guess, probably helped as well.
So from a Bravo perspective, we are very focused, I would say, on local players and kind of trying to develop that. But we're trying to be open to other avenues. You know, we're very aware that the both final teams had a European player on it. A lot of the top teams, I think. No, Ring did not have we've talked about this. Ring didn't have a foreign player, but a lot of the top teams do. And there are probably other reasons just to like foster community and everything and networking. But can you give us maybe the sales pitch on why maybe we should consider opening the doors a little bit more to that concept?
So
sorry.
I feel like I'm living the hypocrite life a little, in that I don't necessarily think it's the right thing to do as a club.
Yeah, you won't even take me on Clapham.
You can try out. You
gotta try out, man.
If you try out, and if you're in London for more than 6 months, then we'd consider it.
More than 6?
Oh yeah, you gotta be. If you're in as a bullfrog, you're in as a bullfrog, my man.
The bullfrogs. I like that.
Yes, sir.
Oh, dude.
So Clapham has a fairly solid history of keeping people on long term once you're on on the club, you are on the club. There isn't many examples over the 20 years of people getting cut from year to year. There are discussions that are had in terms of if your ability isn't up to where it needs to be right now, the coaches and captains will have a chat, and you may not get selected for tournaments. We have a squad of 32 guys fighting for 24 to 26 spots. If you're consistently one of those 6 not making it on, then you got some work to do. And if you're not one of those 6 making it on because you're clearly not working at it, then discussions would be had. But that basically never ever happens. Like, everyone is buying into that. And generally, if you've been on the squad for a number of years, you will be training twice a week with the best players in the UK and some of the best players in Europe consistently, and so you will get to that level. Like, we have guys who didn't make our nationals roster in 2019, now part of the GB defensive captaincy, like some of the best defenders in the country, because of the development that's come through. So, and we don't really take pickups in the same way for that same reason. We wouldn't give that spot to someone when it could be taken by someone who is working really hard and training with us twice a week for the past 3 years to make that world's roster. And so for me, I think a team like Pony or Bravo or Truck, bringing those players through in that way will benefit you more long term than picking players up for a single season. And it's something I've thought about and talked about a lot, between the difference kind of between top European teams and top US teams. For the likes of La Fota and for Clapham and maybe for Mooncatchers now, European titles are amazing, and that is kind of the ultimate goal of each season. But if it's for us now, especially, it's like, if that's at the detriment of being able to win a world semi or win a world's final, then we're happy to have a slightly less successful season. And we want to peak at the right time, and we want to win Euros. But if we lose 2024 Euros and 2025 Euros, and it means we're in the final of Worlds, we're absolutely gonna take that. Whereas and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but for the US, it's like, work is kind of an extra. It's just an extra thing that happens pretty early on in your season, and actually you want to be one of those teams that's winning US nationals. And if you do manage to do that, you want to be one of the very, very, very few teams that have done it more than once back to back, or like 2 years in a row, right? And having an individual player come in and be able to make quite a bit of a difference suits that kind of approach much more than ours would.
Right. Yeah. U.S. Nationals is definitely still the highest priority, I think, of any team, of any player. I know, like, after we won in 22, Will Laurie told Johnny and Rowan that it's more meaningful than his U24 World Championship. Quinn's on the U.S. national team this year. I would bet 1,000% that he would rather win a club title again than. Although I guess losing the gold at Worlds would be pretty devastating.
But that's the thing, is like, it's not about winning with the US. It's about not losing, which is like. But for U.S. nationals, it's like, for every single team every year, it's about winning. Like, even if Truck comes out with the same roster, it's going to be like, well, it's still like they technically kind of lost to Boston, or they had a lot of tight games. Like they went 1-2 in pool play. Like it's always about winning at U.S. nationals. It's never about not losing for anybody.
There's nothing wrong with going 1-2 in pool.
There's nothing wrong with going 1-2 in pool play.
And it's because of the standard that you have to beat every single year, right? Like you end up in a difficult quarterfinal because Truck go 1-2 in pool play, and now you're playing the eventual winners in a pre-quarter or in a quarterfinal, and it's like no team has to go through that level of difficulty in any other tournament in the world ever. Like, you don't have to play a world-class top 2 team in the world at basically every stage of the bracket in any other team, maybe other than World Games, right? And the USA still show every year that they are eventually going to come out on top in a lot of those as well. But like Colombia and Germany are putting up a fight in that now, but still not from a 1 to 8 depth standpoint. And I definitely felt that in our nationals run. I think we were fortunate to play as well as we did against Chain and Rhino in those 2 games that really mattered. But like Rhino nearly beat us at Pro Champs. Chain had beaten us earlier on in the season, and they were up on us at going towards half in that final pool game. Like, and that was, and they were difficult games to come away and win. I can't imagine there are many tournaments where USA or GB or Germany are playing a pre-quarter or a quarter-final, and it's like the final of the tournament, whereas that is seemingly almost always the case in US nationals.
And you were talking about Windmill. Are you going to Windmill? Which team are you going to be playing for? Team GB or a different team?
Clapham have entered Windmill this year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that's actually our only tournament as a full squad before UK nationals this year.
Sweet.
And GB have entered in the past, but Windmill tends to be fairly varied in terms of the standard and ability of teams across the board, because they do a little bit of a mixture of entering elite teams and then getting as many teams involved as possible as well. But it is Swiss format, so you tend to play the best teams early on in the tournament anyway, which is great. But yeah, very, very, very much looking forward to playing the likes of the US and Canada as Clapham. I think that's going to be awesome.
I'll wear my Clapham jersey to warm up.
Good man.
Before we beat the doors off you guys. We'll see.
You'll be playing for the right to wear number 88.
Yeah. If
wow.
The loser has to change their number, all right?
Jeez, man. Are you planning on doing 88 for your US roster as well?
Already ordered.
Nice.
You two are, forward to it. I don't know any other 88s besides you two. Yeah, except for me, because I have now taken the number.
Mike's wearing it for Grandmasters now, so
nice.
Just us three. Frisbee,
nice and symmetrical, nice and rounded. It's a great number.
Yeah, I actually think Tim Schock used to wear 88. I'm fairly certain he used to wear 88.
I'm changing it.
But he doesn't anymore.
He was very kind. He was very kind to let me have it for Machine last year.
Yeah.
How do you like your odds at this upcoming Worlds tournament, Connor? How are we feeling going into that? I know it's still a little bit a ways away, but
yeah, it's so hard to tell, man. Like every year, GB are one of the European teams that to beat and to maybe stick it to one of the top teams, whether that be Australia or the US, Canada, whoever. I think to kind of touch back on the point about the depth and talent now, I think we are getting to the point as a nation where we can put together a 24, 26 strong team that is heavily made up of world-class players that can compete at that level. So if things go right and those top players are performing to the best of their ability, and like the bottom of the roster are having those games that allow them to stick with those top US guys or top Canadian guys or whoever, I think we can manage it. But it's just so hard to tell right now, kind of ahead of time. Belgium beating the Open boys in the European finals last year was a big, similar to it's like our national final, I think was a big prompt to make some changes structurally and principally, and how we're going to, if we're not going to beat Belgium in pre-quarters or quarters, then how are we going to go ahead and beat one of the top three teams in semis, right? So, but yeah, really, really looking forward to it. And I think that I don't know whether like the European teams, European players rather, being quite a big part of these US rosters last year is maybe going to give some confidence to that. Like Lena and Levka both playing on the German women's squad. It's like that's with some of the players that they've got, it's going to be they're going to be tough to beat, I think.
Like, would you put them as favorites in that division? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure I can do that. I think that Germany women's squad has the ability to win a quarterfinal, depending on who it's against. I think the GB women's team also has the ability to win a quarterfinal. I think it's gonna end up being who they come up against in that quarter if they're unfortunate with their draw, and then having the game of their lives in a semi. But I think especially with women's, I think that's probably the division that I would be least surprised to see a bit of an upset in semifinals. I think potentially GB, Germany, maybe even the French women have it in them to pull a win against maybe the Canadians or the Japanese, something like that. I'm not sure, but I'm really, really excited to see.
You think an upset in women's more than mixed? Because I don't know why, but I just think mixed is probably what I think is like most likely for an upset.
That's a good point. Yeah, that Beach Worlds run from France was pretty insane. They were very, very, very good. So they were the team that we lost to in semis at EUC last year, and they were head and shoulders the best team at that tournament in the mixed division. So they could be awesome as well. That's a very fair point. I guess I know more about the GB and Germany women's team than I do about some of the mixed. Having a look at those mixed. The mixed US roster and some of the players that they've got on there as well. Yeah. They're going to be tough to beat.
I'm always curious too. Like, I think if a mixed team, like if a German mixed team were to stack the mix, like if their program were to stack the mixed team, as opposed to like, equally dispersing or stacking the women's and the men's, I think if they were to stack a mixed team, it would be really, really interesting. I think it could go either way. I think like there would be no favorites at that if like Germany stacked their mixed team, but I don't really know.
World Games is a good example of that, right?
Yeah, like exactly.
Right.
Some of those top players all playing together for the first time on a squad that had been training for almost a year up to that point, and they beat some of the best players in the world consistently through bracket play, and I think they were really unfortunate to not come away with a medal. The amount of time 100%. And effort that they put into it and the way they were able to play, I think they deserve to come away with the medal. Like Colombia is another example of if they put together all their best forces and whatnot. Like,
is that something that do you talk about that as a like a UK program, the GB program? Like
it's a weird one.
Are you specifically planning to beat US teams? Are you specifically trying to consolidate talent in a certain way?
We have a lot of freedom on preference of team. So if last year I had the choice to say whether I wanted to prioritize mixed or prioritize open, and if I was fortunate to get an offer from both, then it would just be based on my priority. And so generally teams will just be made up of the division that those players want to play in. There are certainly, from a female matching side, players that could play in both the mixed and women's team and be in the top half of the roster, I expect, and it just comes down to which they prefer to play. I think it's good. I think it adds a lot of balance across all three teams rather than stacking in a certain way. When it comes to World Games, generally that's the only time that everything comes together and everyone has that one squad to go for with the goal of beating
the US
top teams. For me especially at the moment, it's like I guess I've kind of come back from Chicago with a new mindset of, if we want to beat US club teams at Worlds in 26 or beat the US national team this year, we have to play in a way that is as if we are playing that sort of opposition and competition at all times. We can't be happy with 60%.
You can't be
rate
backing all the
conversions, right?
time.
We have to be punching for so much higher than that.
Are you planning on playing in the US again?
At some point, for sure, yeah. Worlds being in Australia puts a bit of a spanner of the works on that. As I'm sure you know, Quinn, it's not a cheap trip. And timing wise, between Clapham with Nationals and then GB Worlds and then GB World Games tryouts are likely going to be in towards the end of this year as well. Didn't really have the time to fit in, but certainly plan to come back. Feels like I've got some unfinished business now, and a lot of the start of that cycle with Machine felt very imposter syndrome-y at some point, especially at Pro Champs. It was like I'd come over, they had a lot of trust and emphasis on me coming in and being one of these top European players who was able to come in and make an immediate impact. And it's hard to do against that opposition. You don't have that same level of trust. I think that there's something to be said for like just having some level of experience and presence playing with people that you know and against certain teams, that I would be like a meter short, a yard short of a guy cutting deep. And if most players see that in Europe and they go, not gonna challenge that today, because a lot of the time Connor's going to come down with that, and it doesn't happen. They throw a great hook and it's complete, and it was a lot of adjustment and a lot of confidence building that needed to be done. So I feel as though if I was to come back, I would have already done that, and like getting to the point that we did would bring a lot of confidence there as well.
All right, you can come play for us. No, whatever you want. You can do whatever. Like, you don't even have to be here. You can just show up whenever you want.
But Kins has to play for Clapham.
But you got to take me.
Sorry,
too.
Kins, I didn't get.
Sorry,
Kins, I didn't get any of that at all.
Oh, no. I'm making an offer. You can come here, play for us, do whatever you want, show up whenever you want. You're all good, and then just let me be a frog for a little bit.
And you can do the same with CU. Okay, I will. I'll put it forward to the management.
I'll commit, dude. I'll fully commit.
I mean, if you're half Brit, you're halfway there as well. So
hell yeah,
you have my vote. You have my vote.
Also,
it's good to know.
Kins is not part of leadership or have any decision-making power in that sense. So, but
I have some sway.
But I will say
sure.
you have my vote to come play Bravo. So this is just a recruiting meeting now.
All right, we're taking a quick break to announce our Instagram and YouTube subscriber winners. All people who entered were assigned a random number, and Connor was kind enough to pick a couple random ones to help us choose the winners. I'll bring Connor back in now to announce those numbers.
Hey, Pod Practice, Connor here from AU Coaching, and the two numbers that I'm picking for your contest winners are 16 and 388. Congratulations.
Congrats to Minty FYY, Mintyfi from Instagram, and Cliff T2269 from YouTube. We'll reach out with more details on accepting your prizes. Thanks. All right, I'll ask maybe just one more cross the pond question, and that is Machine plays a really unique style of defense, I would say. Stylistically, like a mixed bag of tricks. Did you get used to all the different styles, and is there anything specifically that you are bringing back to Europe?
I think I struggled a little bit at first, and I think it's because that kind of flexible bag of tricks style D I have done before a lot with Clapham and GB, but the connections that I've built over the years to be able to do so are just became so apparent. I think, yeah, for sure. Just knowing that if I'm able to commit fully to an under and they turn to go deep with CU, I know I can be immediately looking for whoever is deepest as a defender right now and look to bracket or look to share or switch or whatever needs to happen to soften that blow of the overcommittal or whatever. And I guess going to Machine, it was like, cool, I'm going to play super tight match. I'm going to play this US style of defense to really put a lot of pressure on these top offensive players. And actually, there was times where I should have and could have done that less and try to find that flexible style. But yeah, I found it difficult to do that without having those prior connections, I guess, especially only joining at Pro Champs without having had any practices at that point as well. Made it difficult to do so. But the thing I brought back the most, I think, is that when I watch some of those games back, I tend to play a very kind of flexible or a mix and match of handler defense of being containy when it needs to be containy and then kind of locking in when we need to bring the pressure. And I think I didn't quite find the right balance with that with Machine. I think I was not bringing enough pressure in the handler space when it was needed.
Is that something that Machine specifically is teaching, or that you just are realizing after just looking back?
Just watching myself back, honestly, just being in those positions where I wasn't marking a downfield cutter, where I was marking someone in the handler space and not feeling as though I was really able to generate enough pressure on dumps or on swings. The body positioning that I'm trying to take now for downfield cutting has changed a fair bit as well. I think, again, most European teams or UK university teams teach that you stand chest to back and you force people under and you protect the deep space. And it's something that I've always been very comfortable doing, and being on the faster side of most Ultimate players, it's been really useful. But when you get to a point where you're playing against other very fast, very smart players, the difference between being chest to back and being sealed off and being slightly more around and kind of like trying to get your shoulder and your knee ahead of the cutter and being able to commit to that space with them as hard as possible is something that I've tried to now add, which is interesting, as I find myself now being a much smarter defender than years prior. But now trying to kind of re-add or add a new element to my physical match D has been quite fun to add in.
We talk a lot about commitment levels, so we honestly generally, our default is probably to position the exact opposite of what you just described, but it is somewhat individual skill dependent, and it is I mean, it's probably dependent on where we are on the field. There's a number of factors. It is like, for me, if I were going to be guarding anybody who's playing in the men's division right now, I would definitely be playing back shoulder, because I just don't have the speed to contest or challenge any if someone just goes. But for us, it is like, we do try to match the commitment level, knowing what we are trying, like exactly what we're trying to take away. And I guess what that means is, I guess, like our default, if we were talking about the opposite positioning where we're kind of more fronting, like if I see someone going deep, my matchup, it's important for us not to completely sell out on that, knowing that it's so easy for us to overcommit, unless, like, contextually, we know that is obviously the deep threat that we have to sell out on.
That you're beat and there's no one there to help out or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing for me is that trying to find the balance between the two, and to not just be happy with chest to back or protecting deep D being this one thing that people do. Like, there is a difference between being chest to back in a position that means you're getting sealed off by your cutter, and being chest to back in a way that you're still almost ahead of them. But if they want to turn and go deep, your body is still there. It's still in the way. Yeah. But at what point does your body still being in the way move from, okay, my body's no longer in the way on this committal, but I can go back very slightly instead of just being fully there, right? Like, trying to find that middle ground has been has been a big thing for me with kind of hip positioning and trying to get my knee just ahead of the guy, knowing that my body is still in this position, but I'm already ready to run into that space. And if you want to go deep, you have to go through me or fully around me to be able to do so. I think we tend to teach two very distinct, either chest to back or chest to chest fronting, when there is that more kind of niche specific
Right.
to it.
Regarding machines, D, specifically Johnny, what do you think it is about Johnny that allows him to just play everywhere all at once? And
I think
he seems to like, doesn't even seem to matter who he's playing with. Like you were talking about the chemistry pieces that you have with your Clapham teammates, your CU teammates. For Johnny, it's just like, it seems like he's just gonna do what Johnny does, and then generally doesn't get punished for it. Well, and I shouldn't say punished by his teammates. Like he doesn't really get beat by his matchup that often.
Yeah. He and Dan Demare from Belgium and Mooncatchers are very similar in that regard, and I think a lot of it comes from the teammates having the utmost trust in them to do so. I think if you try and play with Johnny and you don't expect what he's going to be bringing and don't buy into his ability to roam and get a block, then it's not nearly as effective. And Dan is exactly the same. Moon will spend a lot of time picking up the pieces of Dan roaming, and that makes it sound very negative, but it very clearly has a more beneficial impact than it does negative. But if you bring him into a team that isn't expecting that, or that doesn't play that kind of pick up switchy style of D that they bring, then I don't think it's nearly as impactful, and you end up getting those punishing moments where they've taken a big gamble and actually that person's ending up completely free. I think the fact that Johnny has been on machine for so long, and the defensive management are like, you need to be able to be aware that this is going to happen, helps set that up for success, I guess.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about like matchups and just defense in general. And I know you're a D-line player generally, and work for machine. I'm curious who your hardest matchup is, or who you felt was the hardest person to guard in the U.S., or maybe the hardest person to get open in the U.S. And then also that for Euros.
Yeah. So I enjoyed marking Christian Boxley. I think part of the difficulty of marking Christian was just like when Johnny and Rowan get the disc, they're just going to hit Christian. It doesn't matter where he goes. They will break the mark and they will get it to him. And if you overcommit on the break side, he's bouncing open and he's getting it. I think he is someone that a team needs to look to take out of the game by using multiple players. I think you basically just need to go, look, if Christian touches the disc half as much, but one of their less influential players picks up the slack, then fine. Having that trust there between your core at the back and then him kind of acting as that in between, or as that release valve, having that trust in him and in them for him to be hit by them is just unbeatable at times. So it's really interesting trying to find the balance between just committing to the open side and not just getting wrecked on the open side when Rowan or Johnny or whoever else just broke the mark to him. And also Brett Holzmeyer for Chain. We played against them
That's
at
an interesting matchup.
Pro Champs. Yeah, he's a big guy, and like you see him in Europe, and you're like, you push him under, you get him on the disc, and you make him throw the frisbee, and then he does that at Pro Champs or at Nationals, and the dude's running give goes and getting free up the line. You're like, he's got a sneaky good skill set, I think. I think we did a good job of nullifying him a little bit at Nationals in that pool game. Didn't score deep as much as I'm sure Shane would have liked him to, and I don't know whether they relied a little more on their core handler set in that game than previous. But like him being in the short field on the disc is exactly kind of where you want him if you're looking to try and shut that down. But him being someone who I'd seen as like I translated over from other big receiver, slightly more one-dimensional players to seeing the sort of fully rounded player that he actually was really cool. And I think he made one of the US national teams this year. I don't know if it was mixed or open, but I'm excited to see him.
Mixed team.
Yeah. I don't know how old is Brett? Is he a young guy or?
I think he's similar.
No idea.
I'm 20. I just turned 26. I think he's a little older than me, but
Okay.
similar to my age. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, like he was
on it.
really
Yeah,
really fun to match.
out.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, those were two that definitely stuck out rather. And Alex, of
What
course.
about?
Sorry,
What about in Europe?
to drop that in there.
Who's your favorite person to match up with? Yes, you idiot.
Especially a healthy Alex.
Yeah,
He's a tough matchup.
Healthy Alex is tough.
He gave me a
Also, I don't think I've ever
little.
called you Alex. That was weird.
He gave me a little good game 88 in the semis, which I didn't forget. So you're on my good list.
Wait, what did I do?
You
I
said
don't remember
something nice, it
exactly.
sounds like,
Yeah,
for
you
once.
said something nice. You gave me a little good game 88 with something in there around all the trash talk and other nonsense. That was quite nice.
Me? This dickhead? Must have been someone else.
He was talking to me. He was talking to me.
Yeah.
He was looking at you, but he was talking.
Could have been Quinn. Quinn didn't have his best game.
Hey.
Yay! You know, from your own lips.
Yeah, fair enough.
In Europe,
Fair enough, Mike.
Dan is hard to mark. Damare is difficult. He plays a very different style of cutting to what I'm used to. It's kind of American
slippery.
football. Yeah, for sure. It's kind of American football-esque with like those jab steps where you wouldn't usually expect to see them in Ultimate. Like halfway through a cut, just taking a single step deep to then continue that undercut. Like you're taught in Ultimates that you make a player commit his hips one way and then you commit the other way and you go and get the disc. And Dan has shaken that up quite a bit to the degree where I play defense very, very, very differently on him than I do on other players on his team that play a much more committed style of cutting. So that was definitely one to think about. And we had a lot of footage and planning going into the Euros final for exactly that. Just like having rules that we set for ourselves and not biting on fakes and not committing to too much too early with him, because that's exactly the style of cutting that he plays. Who else? And the Italians are just tough to mark. Like they play a very fast, athletic style of offense that is difficult. They don't very often get you in a position that you can comfortably kind of set up on them in a way that you can see the disc and see the space they're looking to attack. They're just moving the disc constantly in a very Team Japan style, kind of buzz bullet style of play that is difficult.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Difficult to stop. Yeah.
What is it going to take for a European team to beat one of these US teams at Worlds, do you think?
So
how about what's it going to take for you guys to challenge Quinn's team?
So I think the first thing I sort of touched on it earlier is the expectation
playing out of your minds
to take into the game. Yeah, that will help. I think we need to go into these games expecting the level of intensity on D that we're going to get, and expecting as an O-line that we need to play high value, low risk ultimate in order to win. We can't hook our way to victory. We can't just think we'll just absorb the pressure and we'll just take free, easy, open resets that are going to be losing yards. We need to be able to play high value ultimate without resorting to low percentage options. And I think a lot of that is going to come from having that expectation going into the season and into those games that we are going to have levels of defensive pressure that we have not had yet this year.
Yeah,
How
you have
can
to
we
be used to
replicate
playing
that?
that style.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
have to,
And
I imagine, like, when those moments are like, manufacture those moments in practice where you don't rely on the easy outlet, but also, like, I imagine the US's pressure is going to be significant. They're going to disconnect your backfield from your downfield. Like, what can you do to, I think what you were saying from the defensive perspective, but offensively, how do you reconnect from the backfield? How do you stay connected so those low percentage options become at least reasonable shots for you guys to take?
And ahead of time, it's how can we create those environments at practice and in these tournaments where we're maybe not playing USA level teams. How do we get
we
ourselves
talk about
in
that
positions
even at like during our own like tryout processes in Colorado, because it's like the nature of everybody to take goal shots, to make big plays. But like, does that help you get better in the moment? It may help you win that point, but it's not necessarily sustainable offense or defense. It's not going to help you as a team overcome those moments where you're playing such a quality opponent where like those options aren't always going to be there, and so you're basically just losing a rep.
For sure. And it's something that teams do so often. They go into easier tournaments or easier games and they let their level of expectation or let their standard drop because that opposition or those games are easier. And like you say, it's like, well, we have to be able to make the most of this as much as we can. Doesn't matter who the opposition is, you got to play as if you're playing the best teams in the world at all times, because otherwise you're just wasting those opportunities and wasting those reps.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I don't fully buy into that. Like I think we say that stuff a lot, but like when I'm playing, I remember like we were playing in like it's whatever. When you're playing in a tournament, I just don't think. I don't know. I'm more on the wave of like whatever is in front of you. Maybe you can play that way. I don't think trying to like replicate playing like I remember at US Open we played. I forget like
Mutiny.
Mutiny, and then like we played Mutiny and who was the other team in
Omen.
our pool? Omen. And then we went to play Pony. I don't think there's anything you can really do playing Mutiny and Omen to like get ready for Pony. Like I think the best thing you can do is just like
get through the game quickly.
Play Mutiny, play Omen. Like don't worry about trying to play a certain type of way that's gonna. And then when you go to play Pony, like get ready. And like for me, the biggest thing is always like those windows, like the stark difference in how big the windows are that you're throwing. When you play a Mutiny and play an Omen, like the throws just feel so easy. Like the windows feel so big. And then you play a Pony and like you just like the windows are still there, but like they're so much smaller and you have to feel comfortable hitting those smaller windows because as soon as you start to look off some of those tighter shots, like that's what really stagnates and makes your offense like, more difficult. And I think like, I don't know if that's something you can prepare for mentally.
Well, I think though you are agreeing though in a way. It's very hard to replicate. It's basically impossible, especially if you're just considering if the measuring stick is such a different level of competition.
I would just say maybe like in some situation. I don't know. No, I'm disagreeing.
I think if you're able to come away from those games with a genuine and honest reflection on certain scenarios, certain throws or certain cuts or whatever, and be able to say, if I were to take that same option against Pony in the next game, would it complete? And you're able to reflect honestly on that with yourself, then I think that can work. Like, just play your game. If a hook's on, take it. That receiver's probably going to be more free, like you say, with Omen than they're going to be against Pony. But if it sits up too long, and you can say to yourself, is Ben Yot going to go and clean that up in this game? And if you say yes, then at least you've been able to reflect and go, okay, I can acknowledge that there is a difference between how I need to be able to play in these two games now.
Totally. Because I think there's something to be said for just playing free and like playing for what's in front of you, you know? And I think like trying to play Omen like you're playing Pony, I don't think is helpful. And I also remember us playing, who was the team we played at pool play? We played Ring, we beat Truck, we beat Ring, and then we played Dark Star. And everyone was losing their goddamn minds because we weren't like playing super well. And everyone was like, we should be playing this the way we're playing. Like,
I do think it's important to not get caught up in the negative emotions of it, if that makes sense.
Well, what happened was we were already locked in to win our pool. So for all intents and purposes, the game didn't really matter. We had won our pool. And I just remember hearing a lot of like, we should be playing this game like it's semifinals at Nationals. And I don't think that's helpful because I think it's not semifinals at Nationals. So trying to make it semifinals at Nationals isn't realistic or helpful.
Yeah, I Quinn was about to say something. Maybe
I don't know if I need to argue about this on the podcast with Connor. I don't need to argue with Kins about this because, I mean, Kins, you didn't play in that game, right? Okay, so as a person that was playing in that game, it felt like we were taking the opportunity to play at Nationals for granted. And that's not something we should do regardless of if we have the pool locked up or if we're playing Darkstar who qualified for their first Nationals. Like, being on the field and playing like we were just like playing pickup frisbee and playing loose, I think was disrespectful to ourselves, to our teammates, and also disrespectful to the other team. That's how I felt.
Yeah,
that's why I was angry about that, because I was definitely one of those people that was losing my mind about that game.
Right. There's an opportunity to sharpen your mental game still in those moments. And this is why, Kins, I kind of feel like you are agreeing. I'm trying to fit your puzzle piece into your triangle piece into my
I'm not saying
hole.
You shouldn't focus and like play what's in front of you. I just think you shouldn't be trying to make it something that it isn't. Like, I don't think we should be playing bad or whatever, like purposely fucking up. I've never advocated for that. But I just know that a lot of teams I've been on, you hear that kind of stuff a lot. And I just don't think it's really a realistic thing. Like, it sounds good to play Darkstar like you're playing a semifinal, but it's just different. And I think you should be more authentic about like what the emotions are. And I agree that you should still be focusing and playing on the way that's in front of you. But I don't think you should expect like a kind of intensity that you're going to get from an elimination game at Nationals, because it's just not what is.
From a decision-making standpoint, do you think there are like hooks you would take in a Darkstar game in exactly the same positions relative to each other, like marking, that you wouldn't take in a Pony game because it's a certain Pony defender, right? Because if it's like you play what's in front of you, I think what people do is that they take the context and they go, oh well, it's Darkstar, and like, oh, we've already won the pool, and so they make those decisions on a certain hook or a certain throw with all of that in mind, instead of actually just what's on the field in front of them at that time.
Yeah, I agree. Because like totally, if it's a way better defender, and depending on who I'm throwing to, I would definitely be looking off, the same hook. And that's because I have a way more respect. A lot of the times when I'm a big decision piece in my huck process is like the matchup. Like we talked about that before, but like I'll throw a lot more shots to receivers that I think are better, and to defenders quite frankly, that I think aren't as good in the air because I just understand like the percentage and like how much higher it'll be. So like for sure, like if I don't have the same respect for sorry Darkstar for like some of those defenders that you do for like maybe a pony defender, and so like something might go up that's like a little looser because I think it still might work, and that's maybe won't go up in a different game because and that's actually something I talk to a lot about people who are trying to throw more hucks in a game. Like I think it's an underrated part of the decision process, which is like the matchup, because I just think like the name of the game is, completing the pass, and you can put yourself to such a high standard if you're trying to huck it to a really good defender against someone else. And even like you can throw a great throw, but if you're at practice and you're hucking it against the best defender on your team, like I don't think that's a good look because it's the best defender on your team to like someone that's, pretty good. But you could throw that same throw to your favorite deep receiver and to someone who's not that great in the deep space. And I think it's a phenomenal decision. And I don't know if people factor that in. And it's hard because you have to factor it in such real time. Like you look downfield, you see what that matchup is. And that's just one of the many things you have to process. But I think it's an underrated part of people and the shots. And honestly, that's like on lots of different throws. I think that it's important on hucks, but I think like on unders and just kind of any throw you're looking at, like we've all maybe looked off an under because that one defender is like clearly hunting it from the back, and maybe you don't trust that player to run through it as much. So I just think, people could think about that more. So yes, it's definitely the process is different from game to game, defender to defender.
It's something I learned a lot actually playing disc golf, was trying to think more about the miss rather than the completion. Is like what am I going to do here on this throw that could lead for it to be a turnover? If I throw this like one of my 2 of 10 bad throws, is it still going to be a completion? And that defender and that receiver is such a huge part of that. Like if I throw this with too much turn into this space, is it still going to be a completion, or is it then going to be a turnover? And if this receiver doesn't quite read it right, are they still going to catch it because they're 6'4"? Like it's little things like that, right? It makes such a big difference.
Totally. And like what your miss, like you got to know, like if you're going to miss, like what's your miss? Cause like we talked about this before, but like when I'm hucking to Quinn, like my miss is like slightly underthrown and to the break side, because I know that even if it's slightly more underthrown, if he has the step and the positioning, like usually they can still go up and catch it, because it's just hard, especially when it's to that break side, for the defender to make a play. And so I think like that's a really important thing too, is being super intentional about like knowing if you're going to like, what you're trying to do on the huck, and then kind of knowing where your room for error is, because like I'd rather underthrow it. And I realized this a while ago because I was overthrowing hucks, and it's just like, why the fuck would you overthrow a huck? Because
there's 0% chance of that.
0% chance. You overthrow it, no one has a chance. If I underthrow it, great fucking chance that Quinn is still going to come up with the pass. And we talked about this before. I think like one of the few misses that I remember to Quinn was in an AUDL game against Ben Yacht. And this is like the type of thing we're talking about, where it's like, I overthrew it. And that was 100% was because I was like, I don't want to miss this short. If I'm going to miss, I'm missing it long, which is a terrible idea, because then it's a turnover.
Right.
I tell you what, I'm glad you overthrew it though, because they'd be playing that clip on fucking Instagram of Ben Yacht just dunking on my shit for like the next 10 years. So I'm so glad that no one even knows about it, because you just overthrew it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And it's funny because we had this point at practice the other day where someone threw a huck, and I forget exactly who the receiver is, who the receiver was, but I know for a fact Jarv was the defender. And it was a good throw, great shape, everything to the break side. And it was Deed, because Jarv is like our best deep defender. And, people went up to the thrower and were like, that's a good look, like good throw, don't worry about it. And I was like, well, I disagree, because I don't think we should.
In that context, you're right.
Good throw, bad look.
I think what this reminds me of, this conversation, trying to tie it back to just Connor's point about honing in and being mentally prepared and getting better, like for the highest level of competition for the U.S. teams, the other teams that, are going to be a challenge at Worlds. When we were talking about like 1v0 practice, or 1v0 drills, just solo throwing, etc. And we also equated it to like lifting and other training mechanisms. You have to have the mental model in mind. You have to know what it is that you are, like when you described, if I miss, I'm going to miss short and to the break side. Like, have you defined that? And if you haven't, then a lot of these reps can be wasted, because it is like, if CU or Team GB is playing some opponent that they're going to stomp, like it's still probably helpful to, like, let's just consider, like, if I am going to miss, how do I miss in this situation? Or like, it is probably definitely relevant to start thinking about, if Yacht's on the field, like, what are we going to be thinking about? Like, how do we want to attack? Like, maybe it is even something like that you cannot replicate, unfortunately, but thinking about things like, Kins, we know this about the next time Yacht guards you. Yeah, it's fine if Yacht knows this.
I'm skying.
We're putting you in the fucking backfield, dude.
I'm going. Throw that shit up. Let me make a statement. Let me slay the giant. Imagine the tone that would set. No, I think that's a good point, Mikey, because it's like, yeah, even when you're playing, like, making sure you're missing to the right, or like, you're throwing it to the right shoulder. Because maybe in that game against Darkstar, you miss to the inside shoulder and it's not a block, but can you have the ability to note that and be like, you know what, but I got to make sure, like, in this next high level game. Yeah. And I think also, like, the skill of being able to play what's in front of you and not worrying about all the other things
it's
that
important.
are going on.
Yeah, being present is important.
Just like being able to, focus on what's in front of you and not worrying about, that stuff. But yes, I agree. Like, knowing what a better throw generally in this situation is, or, that kind of stuff is, it's a good point.
And it helps so much having that VO on the sideline to be able to watch it back and
actually
actually reflect on that stuff as well, man.
We're getting one.
We're getting one for sure.
It's in our doc. It's got the link to it, and it said we should definitely get one.
Yeah.
And by the way, Maddie did find Holzmeyer's birthday. He just had one, March 26th.
Yeah, so
1998.
About a month older than me. I was close.
Happy birthday, Brett.
Happy birthday, Quinn.
Happy birthday, Quinn.
Happy birthday, Maddie. Maddie's birthday was.
Oh yeah,
it was like
happy birthday, Maddie. And congratulations to Bravo alum Elliot Erickson for getting married this past weekend. We are approaching midnight your time, Connor. I don't want to keep you forever here. Do we have any burning topics that we want to make sure we do hit? And I want to give you the opportunity.
I just wanted to ask if there's good disc golf around you, since if I'm gonna be there for like 6 months.
Matty's giving the big shake of the head over here. So
Maddie
London
and I hate
has
disc golf.
Really?
You guys
Honestly,
hate
all right.
Like, who cares?
This is
haters.
This is honestly a topic that I think more people should talk about in Ultimate. The ability to change the way that you throw discs and the ability to recognize your misses on option. Man. It changed the way I approach throwing in Ultimate. 110%.
You sound just like Kins, and I'll be honest. I agree. I played a lot. I played a lot during COVID. I played a ton during COVID, and I think that did help me with my throws.
It for sure helps.
But I'm over it.
Throws.
So
when I watch people learn how to play, like, it for sure. A lot of people ask, like, if it'll fuck up their throws because you're throwing something different. And I'm like, maybe if, like, at the very first you, like, can't figure out, like, which disc you're throwing, but like. I think once you really start throwing them, it helps for sure. Usually adds some more power too, especially with the backhand.
Yeah,
flicks a little harder, doesn't transfer as much, but the backhand for sure. We've had Cheesemo Danny Landisman throwing some DG, and I think his backhand might come out with a little more pop.
Looking forward to that.
Seeing
the different form, and it takes you from thinking I'm just going to throw this throw perfectly. And then you hit a tree and you realize I can't just think I'm going to throw this throw perfectly every single time anymore, because it doesn't happen. You hit a tree or you go out of bounds and you feel like an idiot. But yeah, the
Right.
disc
And
golf in
thinking about
London's
how you're
pretty
like
good.
shaping shots and stuff.
Hmm.
All right. Good to know. Good to know. That's a big plus.
Connor, is there anything you want to plug? Do you want to plug AU a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. If you want to follow, you can find it at Advanced Ultimate Coaching on Instagram. I have got a new video coming out soon on running throw and goes, which is a big part of my game. So I'm looking forward to that coming out soon. Um, I am hopefully going to be launching like remote one-to-one kind of video consultation type stuff soon as well, which is hopefully going to be worldwide. Get on video with some people at midnight UK time in Colorado again. But yeah, you can find that there. And any European teams or UK teams listening and want to do some guest coaching stuff, hit me up for that as well.
Do you have anything recorded that's behind a paywall that we can see?
Sadly, not yet. I'm partnering up with Flick, which is a
We know a Flick, yeah.
you know, Flick. So I'm partnering up with Flick a little bit, and currently the stuff that I'm putting out publicly on AU is also going on Flick. But I'm maybe thinking about creating some like Flick exclusive content for people if they want to subscribe to Flick and then see that as part of their database. To be honest, my process is like I do a video, I get it done, I wait for like 10 days before I post it when I find a date that works best, and then I post it and I film a new video and I do the same process again. So no paywalls out there just yet.
You and Quinn will definitely have to talk about cleats at some point. I saw your
yes, sir.
The video about the boots.
What's there to talk about? Just get the Addy Zeros. Prime knit.
I fucking hate those things, man. The Addy Zeros suck.
That
Prime knit and you're good to go.
Connor, I don't think you did touch on. Have you ever worn American football cleats?
Yeah, so I wore them at work in 2018. I wore the Nike Untouchable 3s, Vapor Untouchable 3s, which were pretty good. The sole plate and stud pattern is still one of the best I've ever worn, but the upper was pretty tough and uncomfortable. So since then, I've gone more for soccer cleats because the uppers tend to be a little softer, a bit lighter. But the Nike Mercurials now are basically like American football cleats, sole plates, just on a football cleat, a soccer cleat upper. They've gone pretty aggressive and long with the traction and stuff there. So.
I had to switch back to real football, American or soccer cleats in my older years. My feet just kill me in American football cleats.
They're pretty brutal.
Do not treat them well. Yeah.
They're definitely
get some prime knit.
They're definitely not comfortable, but I'm not wearing them for comfort. I'll just say that. I don't know. I did wear a pair of New Balance lacrosse cleats, the New Balance Freezes, for about like 2 months before I ripped the cleat plate off them, and I was like, okay, I can't. Like, I can't be going through. I go through a Nike Vapor American football cleat probably every 3 months. So I'm just like ripping the cleat plate off them constantly. But Nike's great because I just send them back and they give me a free pair. So, but
I was going to say that the warranty's pretty tasty.
It's really good. Yeah. So New Balance is coming out with a football cleat. And they're partnering with a rookie who just got drafted in the NFL draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm stoked to try those. Because I love New Balance, like lifestyle shoes. So I'm very excited to try those.
I didn't think we'd be getting on to sneakerhead talk. I'm down.
I'm looking at the Mercurials right now. I kind of want them.
Connor, we'll definitely have to. I feel like we do need to just stay in touch in general. There's so many things I just want to talk about in general, like non-Frisbee. I want to talk more about European Ultimate and exchange notes a little bit more.
Have you had a return guest before? I'd be down to come back.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on. We have.
We haven't yet.
Well,
We say it every
Ari's
time.
Ari's been on a couple times. Grant technically was back to back,
We had to chop Grant up because his internet connection crashed on us, though.
and Connor's almost did.
Yeah, almost.
We've never had a part 2 with anyone though.
Grant, by the way, did send us a message recently that was sort of relevant to the topic we were talking about, like building, like practice habits, like practicing with intentionality. I think it was a clip of Ray Allen talking, and are you familiar with with NBA basketball at all, Connor?
Very, very little. I can kind of tell you who plays in which division, and that's about
LeBron.
Well, he does play. So
Ray Allen was Ray Allen was a prolific 3-point shooter, and kind of even before the big boom of the 3-point shot in the NBA today. He started talking about, actually Steve Kerr talked about this too in a different way, but how in the NBA, like so many shooters just practice like catch and shoot, and they don't really ever get those opportunities in games. So what he started doing was like basically running a sprint and then catching it at the 3-point line and taking a shot, because that's like more realistic to what you're going to see in a game. And actually Steve Kerr, who played for the Chicago Bulls dynasty, he played for the Spurs dynasty and coached the Warriors dynasty in the NBA. He actually was a bench guy, so he would actually practice the opposite, where he would like literally like come off cold off like a chair, I think, and shoot a 3, because like that's what he was being asked to do in
way,
clutch situations.
And I wonder, I try to think about like ultimate kind of equivalents, whether there's anything in there that we really do. But like to go back to like the decision making thing, I think something that comes into mind is how well my hooks have been kind of going to that point, whether they're dialed in for that day and whether the touch and the speed is just on. And I guess like practicing those ones that I haven't done any, and just like having, there's going to be points in a game where, or in a tournament where I haven't thrown a hook yet, and there needs to be that first one. Whereas usually you're practicing your hooks and your focus is on that like last third where I've got them warmed up and this is where they're at now. But actually, those aren't going to be or always be the case, right?
Connor, do you know what a finer thing is?
I have. I heard about the finer thing, and then I tried to listen to a couple of the episodes, and I just couldn't manage to find one. I wanted to know ahead of time, but no, please.
Yeah, we don't do them every episode. Quinn, should we do one? Do you want to explain what a finer thing is?
Yeah, let's do one. I don't know. I'll have to think of one while I'm explaining it, but it's basically a small experience in your life that makes a really big difference. So, we've kind of found that the weirder they are, the better they are. So my like small weird experience, and it doesn't have to be Frisbee related either, is I always wear Crocs to the Frisbee field, and they generally sit in the sun for a really long time, like when I'm playing a tournament. And then when I finally take my cleats off after playing 3-4 games, and they've been sitting in the sun for 5, 6, 7 hours, they're super warm and they're super extra squishy because the sun has just like been beating down on them. So when I put my feet in them and they're like extra squishy and warm, like that is my finer thing. So it's like kind of like that like little weird experience that makes like a big difference in your life. Does anybody have one in mind that they want to start with?
Do I have a good one? I put myself in a corner here.
None of us have one. It's funny, the other day, and now that we've been doing these, like when I find one in my life, like I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's a finer thing. Like, but now that I'm on the spot, I'm drawing.
I do need to just write them down more. But
yeah,
I will stall. I will stall for you a little bit, Connor, because I hope you do have one and can think of one. But in Colorado, it's springtime right now. We are starting to get to the season where I need to take care of my yard, and I've been super busy the last 6 months, I don't know, just for a while. And there's a finer thing right there, Mr. Atlas. But I mowed the lawn yesterday for the first time this year. And my house has been in disrepair for a while, and just like getting everything settled. I guess we actually call it spring cleaning. The house feels good. The yard is relatively manicured. And I'll actually shout out one of my favorite YouTube channels, which will be of no interest to anybody. It's called Kaminka's Solo Life. It's this like middle-aged Japanese man. He doesn't talk on the videos. He doesn't show his face. It's just this guy who lives in the mountains. He cleans his home. He farms a little bit. He cooks a meal. But it's that sort of that peacefulness that I really, really enjoy. And there's something about tidying the home that, a happy home, happy. What do they say? I don't know. Maybe it's a happy wife, happy life.
Happy life is what you're looking for.
But it just feels good.
I can appreciate that. I like a good spring clean to make me feel good about the day. I guess I'm not sure it really falls into the category, but when I guess a fun little finer story is that when I approached Quinn on Instagram actually to see if he wanted to do the 88 trade, and initially Quinn said, it's not really my thing, like, thanks anyway, it was great playing against you, whatever. And I think it's like maybe a day or two later, or the next day, he said, I've gone away, I've had to think about it. It seems like a really dumb thing for me to not do, and so if you'd still fancy it, I'd love to trade. So I met someone who, like, as a young frisbee player growing up, like, everyone knows who Jonathan Nethercutt is, and he's like someone who you aspire to play like, and to play against him is wild. And then the first time I met him is like getting a jersey off him from Quinn and giving Quinn a jersey from me. So it's like a weird combo of, like, it was really nice to obviously hear back from Quinn having second thoughts, and then meeting John to do the trade as if it was just like a casual thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great story. It was so funny. I remember we had literally just pulled up to our Airbnb, and I got the Instagram message from you after you guys beat us, and I was just like grumpy. I was just being a little sore loser, and you messaged me, and I'm like, oh,
did you not realize he was 88?
No, I did. I knew. I was just being a little sore loser, salty, whatever you want to say. And I slept on it, and I was just like, that is the dumbest thing that I've ever like why would I not do that? Like, I think, and I hadn't really done it that much in the past, but I do think it's a pretty cool thing to be able to do with people that I had never done, and I don't understand why I was against it. And so I am very thankful for you kind of opening me up to that. And I think it's a really cool thing.
You will have dozens. You will have dozens and dozens of people wanting to do it this year internationally. It's such a big thing in Europe and at Worlds and at Europeans. Like, I guess that it doesn't happen so much in the US. Like, why would you trade a machine jersey at nationals, right? Like, it just doesn't. Yeah. I get it, but no, it's a big thing internationally in Europe. It's great fun.
Mm-hmm. Maddie, what about you? You have anything in mind? Anything in the lab?
Maddie looks like he's got something in mind.
A finer lab thing, maybe?
I really don't. I have a pretty strict no birthday gift policy.
Like, you won't receive them, or you won't...
Yeah, receiving or giving.
I won't receive them.
Okay.
I love that.
Receiving.
Because if you receive one, that means so you have to give them one.
That's not where the policy originated, but it's a good perk, I guess. My wife tends to violate that policy annually,
Around your birthday.
but she
Right around the birthday. Yeah.
anyway. The only reason I even bring it up is because it is a little weird. She bought me a Flags and Capitals of the World book. So we're literally like, it has,
Moldova.
you open it
Nice.
up and it has
Oh.
flags and it has little and it's so bizarre as a gift, probably for anyone except for me, because I really like flags. I don't really know what to tell you, and so she bought me this cute little book, and I took it with me on my trip this weekend. And secretly I'm studying for Jeopardy because I want to be on Jeopardy one day. And I guess that's my finer thing, is my Flags and Capitals of the World book that I just got for turning 35.
I hate to break
Happy
it to you,
birthday.
Matty, but there will almost certainly be someone out there with the most ridiculous flag knowledge on the planet already doing it on Jeopardy. It's just
I know.
people are crazy, man.
I know. So I want to be one of those crazy people. So,
That's a good
Anyway.
one. Jess knows you well.
she does know me well. So
And Connor, I owe you a video on Instagram of me throwing through the field goals.
Oh,
I haven't gotten around
Oh,
to it, but
yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
Dude.
I'm gonna do it.
I called you
What was
out
the
on that.
range that
Yeah,
you
I
got,
forgot.
Connor, on that?
Yeah.
So we got up to the 60-meter mark, which I think is like 68 yards. But then
Okay.
big Tom Abrams is a long-standing Clapham and GB player, and he somehow has just figured out all the secrets to pulling and throwing really far, and he stuck one through the uprights at about 75-80 meters. He's an absolute beast.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah,
Does it need to be a disc disc?
it was an Ultra Star. It was an Ultra. I did think about bringing the old disc golf discs along and trying to go through both sets of uprights, but no, we kept it to the. I haven't introduced the
Can
disc
I-
golf to AU coaching yet.
Well, we also have the Aria.
Can I use an Aria? Yeah.
Oh.
I'll use an Ultra Star. The Aria would be cheating. I'll say that. I'll use an Ultra Star. So he got like 80, 85 yards then.
He was on. It was a rugby field, so try line
Okay.
to uprights. I think is about 80 yards, something like that. Yeah, he's a bit of a
Wow.
beast.
All right,
Yeah, it was good fun.
Like,
Trailing left
Downwind?
to right, so he had a good righty wind. Not so good for a
Great
lefty. Yeah,
ooh, that's
okay.
a good win.
I don't have that in my forehand for a lefty, so I didn't get it.
The Canadian fellas actually tagged me in it as well. I can't remember.
Oh, you've been double called
exactly.
out, Chris.
I've been double
Christian,
called out.
yeah.
That means you have
Um,
6 tries, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna get it done for you.
Rowan obviously has far too busy an upload schedule to add it in there at the moment.
Well, we're at altitude in Colorado.
We're at
So
altitude.
that helps.
Yes,
I
that's
was
a
going to
disc golf
say,
thing.
I was thinking that Quinn was going to smoke yours, honestly. But that 85 meters that's pretty. That's
I was
Oh,
thinking
I was nowhere near that.
I was thinking I could get about 80 yards. We'll see though. That's maybe just me having a big head.
With a flick or a backhand?
Both sides.
Both sides. Okay.
I actually don't know. My flick is better, so maybe flick.
it's more accurate for sure.
Yeah, more accurate for sure.
If you do bring me back on, we'll have to do it after you've tried the challenge, so we can see.
Yeah. I'll get it done. I'll get it done this week or next.
Sweet.
Big claims.
All right, Connor. I'm sure it's past your bedtime now. Thanks for staying on so late.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Blast.
Okay. Good luck at Worlds. Take down the juggernauts. I mean, we'll be rooting for. I will be rooting for you to medal. I mean,
For a good game.
yeah. All right. Peace out, everybody.
Thanks, guys.